As blacks, we need to ban this Jeffrey Dahmer movie. This is some sick shit. What he did to our race. This is some sick shit. We need to boycott this damn movie off Netflix. This is sick. This is sick. The victim family should be getting paid off every dollar Netflix made. This is fucking sick. We need to ban this Jeffrey Dahmer movie. This is some sick shit. It's sick.
In ninth grade, in biology class, we had the usual dissection of fetal pigs, and I took the remains of that home and kept the skeleton of it, and I just started branching out. Dogs, cats. I suppose it could have turned into a normal hobby like taxidermy. And all I know is that I wanted to see what the insides of these animals looked like. There may have been some violence involved, some underlying subconscious feelings of violence. It was a compulsion. Became a compulsion.
What would you do with the dead animals, Jeff?
Take them back in the woods, skin them sometimes, slit them all the way open, look at the organs, feel them.
Can you describe what you were thinking?
It was just mystifying to me how the insides of the animal looked. There was a sort of general excitement for me. I don't know why. It was exciting to see. I was drinking a lot during that time, and just I don't know, looking for something to some way to find some fulfillment, some pleasure. And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
Did you ever tell yourself, I have to stop this? I must stop doing this?
Yes.
When it was going on?
After the second time, it seemed like the compulsion to do it was too strong, and I didn't even try to stop it after that. But before the second time, things had been building up gradually. Going to bookstores, going to the bars, the gay bars, bath clubs. When that wasn't enough, buying sleeping pills and using it on various guys in the bath clubs. It just escalated slowly but surely. And after the second time, which was not planned, it was out of control. It felt like it was out of control.
Were you relieved to be arrested?
Part of me was, and part of me wasn't.
Explain.
I don't know. It's like I don't believe I have a split personality, but you know the feeling where you're sort of glad about something, but on the other hand you're not. That's how it was. It was a relief not to have to keep such a gigantic secret that I had kept for so many years. And once I saw that I had no choice but to face it, I decided to face it head on and make a full confession. So I am glad that the secrets are gone. I just get angry with other people who think that they have a right to somehow try to blame my parents for what happened. That's not right at all. No one has the right to do that because they're totally innocent. They had no knowledge of it. And that angers me. There comes a point where a person has to be accountable for what he's done. Can't go around making excuses, blaming other people or other things. So I alone am the one who is responsible for what's happened. The only motive that there ever was was to completely control a person that I found physically attractive, and keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping a part of them.
Early evening, early morning hours of July the 22nd and the morning of July the 23rd, 1991.
That's correct.
So that you know, Mr. Edwards, your name is known to the jury because there has been testimony concerning what happened to you and at the apartment of Mr. Dahmer. Do you understand?
Sure.
Okay?
Okay.
Where did you know Mr. Dahmer by name prior to that date?
I've seen him a couple of times before then. I didn't know his name personally.
All right. Did you ever talk to him before that date?
I was speaking to him, saying hello as he passed by.
Just casual, friendly hellos?
Hellos, yeah.
Where was it that you saw him in the late afternoon, early morning hours of July the 22nd?
Grand Avenue Mall.
And that was in Milwaukee,
Correct.
downtown on Wisconsin Avenue.
Wisconsin, correct.
Were you with somebody or were you alone?
A couple other friends, yeah.
Okay, so the record is absolutely clear. You are not a homosexual, are you?
No, not at all.
So you were with a couple of your buddies, were you?
That's correct.
And what were you doing?
We was drinking beer, just talking, hanging out, you know.
About 6 o'clock at night, was it?
Yeah, about 6:15.
Did you have occasion then to see Mr. Dahmer?
Yeah, he approached us eventually and started talking to us. Yeah,
Were you 3 black males?
yeah, one white, 2 black male.
So you're a friend.
Yeah, my best friend was white. Yeah.
When he came up and started talking to you, what is it that Mr. Dahmer said to you?
He said he was just in the city from Chicago. He was taking care of her sick grandmother, I believe, in West Dallas.
Did he have any further conversation with you and your friend?
Yeah, he was just talking. He said he was a professional photographer. He usually pays people for pictures and stuff like that if anybody was interested in making money at that time.
To have to pose for pictures?
Yeah.
Did he describe the kind of pictures that you were going to be posing for if you chose to take him up on the offer?
He said nude.
Nude.
Right.
Now, after he said that to you, what did you and your friends do?
They were just talking, discussing it, you know, seeing what was going on, yeah.
And what did you end up doing? Did you remain at Grand Avenue or did you go somewhere else?
We proceeded from there. He said he was going to buy all his guys beer, rum, and coke, you know, watch videos or something like that.
Rum and coke, did you say?
Yeah, we went to the liquor store on Wisconsin Avenue, 7th and Wisconsin Avenue.
So you walked from Grand Avenue down to 7th and Wisconsin?
Yeah, up, so to speak. Yeah.
At that
Between
time-
5th and 6th, 7th, something like that.
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
The general area of 6th or 7th in Wisconsin. Was it going to be the 3 of you and Mr. Dahmer were going to stay together, or was it agreed upon that one or others of you were going to go with Mr. Dahmer, or was there no agreement?
They were going to meet up with us eventually later on that evening.
Meet up with who?
Jeffrey at his apartment, but he gave them the wrong address at that time.
Okay, so did you, the 3 of you and your 2 friends and Mr. Dahmer, walk down to a liquor store, and what happened when you got to the liquor store?
I saw my brother. We started talking. At this time, Jeff was talking to my other friends.
So you say you saw your brother. He wasn't one of the 3 that you were with?
No.
You saw him on the street?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had conversation.
Right.
Okay, did anyone go into a liquor store and buy anything?
Mr. Dahmer brought liquor. Yeah.
So he went into
Yeah.
a liquor store?
Right.
And when he came out, who was still there?
Okay. When he came out, we were all still there.
And then what happened? Tell us what happened then.
Okay, he was talking to them. Then we were gonna go up the street. I was gonna go home and change and everything at this time. So we proceeded. We caught a cab at the bus station. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was your plan as you were in front of that liquor store after Mr. Dahmer came out with the liquor and you had been talking to your brother? What was your plan? What were you going to do? You say you were going to go home and change clothes?
Yeah, and eventually I was gonna go over there, you know, and maybe check out what he was talking about making the money at that time.
So your interest was in making some money?
Right.
Did he tell you how much you would be paid if you did pose for him?
He said $100.
You had no idea, did you, that this was for any homosexual?
No, he didn't come across like that. And he didn't even act like it.
Always the most responsible, always on time.
In 2004, Emily John hired Tracy Edwards as head cook to feed the homeless at the Cathedral of St. John. She later learned he had never had counseling after his run-in with Jeffrey Dahmer.
It did stun me, which is why I hauled him over to the Red Cross immediately. The nurse said, okay, you can come back, you can come for free. You can come back for therapy, we'll see you in a week. He never came back.
John believes Edwards found relief in drugs and alcohol, which resulted in repeated arrests in the last 20 years.
So now your friends are still there, and you're going to go home and you order a cab for the over at the bus depot. What happens? Tell us what happened.
Okay. And then me and Dahmer, my friend said they're going to go and change and call up the girls, and we'll meet up later on, you know. Yeah.
Was there an address given as to where you were going?
He gave them some address that wasn't correct.
You later found that out?
Right, from my friends.
What happened then? Who else remained there when this was all transpired? Just you and Mr. Dahmer, or you, Mr. Dahmer, and others?
After it all had transpired, it was me and Mr. Dahmer in the cab, you know.
You met up at about 6:45, 6:15. What time is it now at this time?
It's maybe 6:30 as we get to 26th in Wisconsin.
So you stop at 26th in Wisconsin, and what happens there?
Okay, we get out the cab then, and then he suggested he go to the store and get cigarettes before he went to his apartment.
And after he did that, did you go to his apartment?
Yeah.
What route?
Through the alleys, through the back way.
Was there any discussion as to why you were taking that route?
Said it was safer, people wouldn't bother us or whatever.
At the time that you were walking with him towards his apartment, what was your plans on doing when you got to the apartment?
Really drinking the beer, I wasn't really sure if I was going to pose or not, you know. Yep, I wasn't really sure at that point. Yeah.
You at least were contemplating maybe you would.
Yeah, I was going to make up my mind once I got there, whatever.
Were you in need of money?
Yeah, I just started working and the offer sounded good at that time.
Okay. Now, when you got to his apartment, how was he acting? Tell us about his... tell me about his demeanor. You know what I mean by that, Mr. Edwards?
Yes,
how was he acting?
I was noticing a lot of hair loss, and it was already a sensitive subject for me, so I was kind of embarrassed. I was familiar with him.
Just like a normal, everyday person, you know, friendly, good conversationalist. He was talking about the military, things of that nature. Yeah.
Had you been in the military?
My father retired in the Air Force, so I've been to several different bases. I was born on an Air Force Army base in Fort Carson.
And that's the kind of thing you were talking to him.
It's like a family thing, you know, so I know a lot about it.
Had he been drinking alcohol?
Yeah, I consumed some. He was drinking beer at the time.
Well, at the time that you were like going to his apartment, was he intoxicated?
No.
Had he been drinking?
Yeah, I've been drinking a couple of beers.
How about you? Were you intoxicated?
No, not at all.
Had you had something to drink?
I sipped maybe a little beer. My friend's beer, that was it.
All right, now you get to the apartment. You go in the back way.
Yes, correct.
You went up to the apartment. Tell us what happens when you get up to the apartment. Tell us what you observed, what your senses told you.
Okay, first of all, it seemed like a normal apartment. When we got inside, he turned off burglar alarms. I asked him why. First, it was a foul odor, okay?
Tell us about that. What kind of an odor?
It was just like an odor. I didn't quite know what it was. You know, he told me a sewer pipe had broke and management would take care of it. Yeah.
And did you accept that?
Yes, because I worked around at construction companies before, and when pipes bust, sewer pipes bust, they smell. Okay. So I brought that.
So you say your first thing you did was notice the odor. He opened the door to the apartment?
Yes.
You walked in?
Yes.
He turned off something. What did he turn off?
Alarms.
Did you ask him about that?
Yeah, and he said the part of the neighborhood he was in, he was protecting his property, things like that, cameras, VCRs, TVs, things of that nature.
Did you accept that?
Yes, I did.
After getting in the apartment, can you generally describe the apartment, both the apartment that you saw then and the apartment that you saw, the other parts of the apartment you saw? Tell the jury what the apartment was like.
It was like normal, pretty decent apartment, had nice things in it. You know, it had certain boxes sitting on the front, neurotic acid boxes. I asked him about it. He said he cleaned bricks with those. You know, which you can use that type of acid to clean bricks, so I brought that also.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. He asked him about some boxes?
Yeah, that were laying in the front living room floor.
And what did he tell you about those?
That he cleaned brick with neurotic acid.
Okay. Now, was the apartment small, large, medium? Give us a size.
Kind of medium size. Yeah.
Right. Now, when you went in there, you went in, as you entered, were you in the living room?
Yes.
And what was the living room? What did you see in there? The boxes you told us about?
The boxes, there's a couch, there's a fish tank there also, a black lamp. Yeah, there was a little table-like on the left side.
Could you see a refrigerator?
Yeah, I could see the refrigerator on my left.
Was it close to the living room?
Yeah, maybe 8 feet from the living room.
So it was just off the living room?
Right.
Now, did you stay in that room or did you go to another room right away?
We stayed in that room for a while.
And where did you sit, if you did?
Okay, at the end of the sofa, like I am now, this is a sofa. I was at this end, and he was at this side.
Referring to the jury, I mean, the witness box, if that were a sofa, he would be at that end. That is the end where he's seated on the witness stand, which would be the part closest to the judge. Is that right?
Tracy Edwards and another man, Timothy Carr, are charged with recklessly endangering safety. Edwards' attorney asked that his client not have to appear in intake court today to avoid being shown on camera, but the court denied that request. A witness told police on Tuesday night Edwards and Carr threw a third man into the river in downtown Milwaukee. That man, named Johnny Jordan, drowned. During the short court proceeding today, Edwards listened to the charge against him and spoke only to tell the judge he understood what was happening.
You understand you've been charged with recklessly endangering safety, first-degree party to a crime, and upon conviction of this offense, which is a Class F felony, you may be fined not more than $25,000 and imprisoned not more than 12 years and 6 months or both. Do you understand that charge and those penalties, sir?
Yes, sir.
Where did Mr. Dahmer, what did he do?
He sat like here, maybe a couple feet from me.
Not
My
close
left.
to you.
Maybe 2 feet.
You in fear of anything at that time?
Not at all.
Okay, and what did the two of you do?
Okay, he said we were still talking, chatting, you know. He asked me was I interested in doing the photography. You know, I told him I was still contemplating, so therefore he offered me a beer and a rum and coke mixture at that point.
Now, you're fully clothed,
Yes.
okay, and you're sitting on a couch,
Right.
and he talks to you about this posing, you weren't sure you're going to do it.
Right.
How much had you been offered to do the pose?
$100.
Okay, and when he brings you the beer, he brings you rum and coke?
Yeah, he brings the beer first, and then he brings the rum and coke.
How big of a glass?
Maybe that big.
About 4 inches high?
4 inches, yeah, 3.5, something like that.
Did you ever taste it?
Yeah, I took a few sips.
Was it strong, weak, medium, or just about right?
I'm not a big liquor drinker, so it didn't taste that good to me. I don't.
Didn't taste good to you. You don't know if it was strong or not.
It's strong or not, because I'm.
What did Mr. Dahmer do? Did he likewise have a drink?
I think yeah, right, a beer, but I don't think he drank all of his drink at that time.
Did he have any rum with him?
I just noticed the beer. Right?
What time are we talking about now that you're sitting on the couch and you get the beer? You got over there about what time and how long after this?
It was about before 7, quarter to 7, something.
So you're sitting on the couch, he brings you a beer and rum and coke, what happens?
Okay, and then we just study talking and everything, you know.
General talk?
General talk.
What happens?
Yeah, then I was just, I don't know, getting a little agitated maybe, you know, because of the smell and things. And then he threw my conversation off talking about the fish in the fish tank, you know.
Okay, when you start talking about the fish in the fish tank, do you bring that up or does he?
He does.
And what do you do when he does that?
I turn to the right, like the fish tank is here, I'm turning all the way over here.
You turn to your right to look at it?
To look at the fish tank, right.
And when that happens, what happens to you?
All of a sudden a handcuff and a knife is pulled on me.
Handcuff is placed on your body? Where?
On my left wrist.
And you see a knife?
Yeah, the knife, yeah.
Now, at that moment, what do you do?
First I feel fear, then I ask him what's going on, you know. This is not necessary, you know, to pull a knife on me.
Are you afraid?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to know why he did that?
None whatsoever.
Did you have any idea at that time it was going to happen?
No.
Tell me about his demeanor at that time when you looked and realized he had a knife and you in a cuff. You were only cuffed on one wrist.
One wrist. Yeah.
What was happening to the other part of the handcuff?
Okay, he had it in his hand.
He was holding it?
Holding that in the wrist, yeah.
Where was the knife? In the other hand?
The knife was like, yeah, here. The knife was in his hand. He had it on me like this.
Let the record reflect he was holding the knife in his right hand as he showed it, holding the cuff in his left hand. Is that right?
Right.
And your left hand is cuffed?
Yeah, right.
Where do you have the knife? What kind of a knife was it?
It was like a military knife, a machete of some type. Yep, he had lowered right up under my rib cage.
So he had
it somewhere in the back here.
He had it pointed at your ribcage.
Yeah.
Did you feel it? Touch
yeah,
it?
he had it on me. He had it against my body.
What happened? What was going through your mind the moment that happened when you realized you had a knife at your side and a handcuff on your hand? What did you think?
I think like, you know, what's going on? You know, this guy's so nice, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like he was pulling knives and handcuffs and all on me. You know.
What'd you do? What'd you say to him?
I asked him what the problem was. You know, that it's not necessary to do this. You know.
What'd he say?
He told me at that point if I wouldn't do what he said, he would kill me. You know?
Now, tell us about his demeanor at the time that you look at him and you say, what's going on? You don't have to do this. What happens to Mr. Dahmer? What's he like?
It's like not the same person that we met at Grand Avenue Mall.
How does he different?
His face structure seemed different. You know, his body structure, it's like it wasn't him anymore. You know, it's like it was a totally different guy here.
So he told you if you didn't do what he told you to do, he'd hurt you.
It hurt me.
What'd you do? What happened? Tell us what happened step by step as best you can remember.
And then all of a sudden he kind of calms down, you know, and then he said he has a key in the bedroom, so we proceed to the bedroom.
The key to the handcuffs?
Right.
You believed he was going to take him off?
Yeah, at that point I had to go along with this guy, you know, and then if I had to find out, so I walked back there with him. He kind of guides me back there.
Guides you back with the cuff and the knife?
Yeah, right.
And you go into the bedroom?
Right.
What do you see in the bedroom?
A big, about 50, 60 gallon drum barrel, whatever.
You ever see a 50, 60 drum barrel in anybody's bedroom before?
Not at all.
Do you have any idea? Did you ask him what it was?
No, at that point I asked no questions at that time.
Was there a bed in that room?
Yes.
How was the bed? Was it made, unmade? What did
It was unmade.
What did you see on the bed, if anything?
Something like a stain or whatever.
What did you think it was?
At that point in time, I wasn't sure.
What did you do when you got in the bedroom as he's holding onto the cuff and the knife? What did you do?
Studied us talking, trying to be friends with him. You know?
Did you remain standing? Did you sit down?
He made me sit down at that point. We both sit on the bed.
Was it at the foot of the bed, side of the bed, head of the bed?
Maybe halfway between.
Did that room have a TV set in it?
Yes.
Was there anything going on the TV?
Yeah, the Exorcist movies was playing at that time.
There was an Exorcist movie on. You know which one of them?
The name I'm not sure. I think it's 3. I'm not sure which one.
So there was a movie. Did you know it to be part of television or VCR?
VCR, normally that's not on regular television, so I thought it was VCR.
You knew there was a movie show?
Right.
Did you see him put it on, or was it on?
No. When we first got into the apartment, he went through the back, into the back bedroom. Maybe he put it on then, I'm not sure.
Okay. And then what happened? You're both sitting on the bed?
Yes.
Are you still in handcuffs?
Yes.
Is he holding the handcuff?
Right.
You still have the knife?
Right.
Is it pointed at your side, as you told us before?
Right.
You trying to be cool?
Very much so.
You're not fighting with him?
No.
What's your intention? What are you planning on doing?
Getting away. I was contemplating on that point, jumping out the window. I was basically talking with this person, trying to let him know I was his friend.
As you were sitting there on the bed, when he had you by the handcuff and a knife at your side, at that time, which would have been maybe 7 o'clock, what impression was made upon your mind by the conduct, action, manner, expression, and conversation that you observed of Mr. Dahmer?
His frame of mind is what you want to know. Okay, he acted. At times he would go through like different changes with me, you know.
Tell us about that.
One minute he's like nice, then he was telling me he didn't want people to leave him or abandon him, things of this nature. Yeah.
Well, what did you think about him as a person? What impression was made on your mind of this fellow that you're dealing with here?
Yeah. That at times he wasn't himself, and then at times he was like a nice guy, you know. He would come and go different times, you know, throughout the whole time. Then he would like sit, being quiet at times, watching a movie, wanting me to watch the movie, you know, just doing little tanning sounds, you know.
Did you observe him watching the movie and how he would react to the movie?
Right, he would like to start rocking back and forth, you know, certain parts of the movie or whatever.
You have to say, what did he say, madam?
He was like chanting at certain times and rocking back and forth.
Tell us about his chanting. What was that all about?
I'm not even sure, sir, but it was just like, I can't tell you the words. I couldn't understand what he was saying at that time.
Can you mimic him? How it sounded?
It's like a slow slur, like some of that nature, some close like that, I'm not sure.
Did it keep on for a period of time?
Off and on throughout the ordeal.
And how about the movement back and forth? How was that being effectuated?
Just like back and forth, he would do it every now and then.
Just as you are rocking in your chair?
Like this.
And chanting?
And chanting.
Was there any parts of the movie that was going on that you saw that he said anything about?
It was like the part about the preacher that used to be a preacher that had got possessed. That it would seem like he was like interested in that part. That part had his attention more than anything.
But tell us about what you mean by that. What impressions were made upon your mind when this was going on as to had his attention? How did he appear to you?
It appeared like it was like he wanted to mimic it or be like that part, you know, being demonized or whatever in that nature.
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, like he wanted that type of movie, that part, certain parts of that part interested him. You know, it was like he changed with it at times, and he would get more aggressive, try to get me to handcuff myself, both hands. He's told me it made him feel more dominant.
Okay, did you and he move off of the bed at any time?
Yes, he wanted me to lay flat down, stomach down on the floor at that time.
Did you at any time go to the bathroom, use the washroom, prior to the time that he asked you to lay down on the floor?
No.
Tell us what happened how did that happen that he told you to lay down on the floor?
Yeah, he told me to lay down face down, put both of my hands behind my back, because he changed again at that point, like he got more aggressive at that time.
Okay, now, but tell us, did he still have the knife out?
Yes, he still had the knife out.
And what did you do?
Okay, I kind of like laid on my sides for some reason. I guess God told me not to lay flat down and let this person handcuff me, so I didn't.
So you were trying to stop that from happening, but you got down on the floor.
Right.
What did he do?
He kind of laid across me, put his head across my chest at that point.
What was he doing with his head?
Pardon me?
What did it appear to you he was doing with his head? What was he trying to do?
Like he was listening to my heart, because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart.
Said he was going to eat your heart?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he still have the knife? Where was the knife pointed?
When I was on the floor, he had it pointed at my groin area at that time.
One knife?
He had several, and then he slipped when I managed to slide one underneath the bed. And I guess during a point of time through an ordeal, he didn't know where the knife was, so I didn't know if he thought that was a threat or not.
So he still had a knife, you're on the floor. How long does he lay on top of you trying to hear your heart as you've described it?
Maybe a minute and a half.
And then what did you do then?
I knew something was about to happen, so I suggested that I go to the bathroom. I had to use the bathroom.
And what did he do?
He kind of guided me to the bathroom.
So when you say he guided, you still had hold of your handcuff?
Yes.
And you went to the bathroom?
Right.
Did you urinate?
Yeah.
Were you able to utilize your own zipper, or did he touch you at all?
Touched me in no way. Didn't attempt to look, he just held me in back.
So in other words, he didn't try to look at what your penis looked like or anything?
Not at all.
So after urinating, did you think that you were going to be the victim of, did he ask to engage in any homosexual acts with you?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so now you leave the bathroom and what happened?
Okay, then we go back into the bedroom. It was like different times, man, as we were talking about him losing his job. Then he would come to the person that I was first with, and then at certain points he would change. At first he was telling me about how people didn't care for him and things of this nature, and I was trying to comfort him, letting him know that I was a friend, that I wasn't going to try to run away from him or nothing.
You were being cool.
I guess God, you can say that, because I had no control. I was just...
Did this continue on for a long period of time during the night?
Yes, apparently so. Time seemed to, I don't know. But I stayed in there that long, so it had to be going on throughout the whole ordeal, which it was. So time just happened like that.
And all this time you're trying to hold him down?
Yeah, certain points, right.
How often would he go in and out of these moods?
Sir, the time spans I couldn't really tell you, but he would I guess if you want to put it together in time, every 30 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, and then he would have moods of being just silent, and I wouldn't say anything, try to provoke him or say the wrong thing. I would be silent with him.
So you just let him be alone. Was that movie on the whole time, a long time?
It was on a pretty good period of time. When it went off, I couldn't tell you.
Did he continue to chant from time to time?
Yes, it happened several times throughout the ordeal.
Now, when he would watch the movie, did you notice when he would go into this thing that you told us where he would really become fixed on the movie screen? What was happening? How often would that happen?
Throughout the movie, maybe every 15 or 20 minutes, and then he would turn around and try to ask me to put both of my hands behind my back, and I wouldn't, do it. I would talk to him. I tell him, you can trust me, you don't have to do this, and that would calm him down a little.
He had the knife the whole time.
Right.
He's watching the movie and he becomes very interested in the movie.
Right.
You don't do anything, just sit there.
Just sit there and be quiet.
And then he would start conversation with you again.
Yeah, he would say, you're going to have to do this and that, Then he told me at a point I was going to have to kill him, or either he was going to have to kill me at one point.
Were you and he drinking during this time?
No.
So he wasn't running out, bringing you out and getting beers and coming back?
No, I would have been out the window at that point.
Sure. Did he, when he was fixed, I'm trying to get some words to understand, was he intoxicated?
He had been drinking, but as far as being intoxicated, he was not staggering or anything of that nature.
But you know that some people, when they have too much to drink, change their moods. Was that the kind of mood changes he was having, or a different kind of mood change?
I think this was more of an inner mood change than an alcoholic mood change.
What kind of mood?
It's
inner mood?
Yeah, person change, not alcohol change.
What did you think about this guy? What was going through your mind as to who you were sitting next to, who was doing all these things?
A bizarre individual, someone that was very confused at this time.
The Arby's Reuben, a modern-day classic.
McCoy makes buying and selling fast and easy. Just look at this. I found these Nikes for $50 below retail, and they look brand spanking new.
Now, there came a time when you went to the washroom again?
Right, I suggested, because he had started getting aggressive a little bit again. I suggested go to the bathroom. He let me stay in there by myself while he stayed outside the door at that time.
And what happened then?
And then I told him, I was contemplating, I was asking God, shall I make my move now? And I was going to just jump out the window. But when I got out, for some reason, I asked, could I have another beer? Yeah.
And what did he do?
And he reaches over, he guides me over and reaches in and get a beer.
He still got you on the cuff?
Yeah, and then he tells me, I told him I want to sit in the front because it's an air conditioner, and I was just going to try to jump out the window or go for the door or whatever, and because the back bedroom didn't have an air conditioner, only in the front. So I suggested we sit on the couch. I had unbuttoned my shirt to try to make it feel more at ease. And then And then I just sat on the couch and he just started going out of himself again.
Going out of himself?
Yeah, he was like paying me no attention at that time.
Like he wasn't there?
Yeah, he started the chanting again and just sitting there, And then I just, for some reason, I said, well, I need to go to the bathroom again, and he didn't follow me at that point. So I reached up, I got up, and I hit him, and I ran out.
So you hit him?
Right.
Did you have any other belongings there?
I have my bag right there at the end of the couch. I sit in exactly the same place that I sit when I went in there.
So when you got up, he let go of your cuff to let you go to the bathroom again?
He just let me stay there. I was going to go for the window. At that point, he didn't even have the cuff. It's like I wasn't even there anymore.
And when you saw that, what'd you do?
I just seized the opportunity. I said, well, at least I'm going to die trying. I'm not just going to sit here,
What'd you do, son?
I hit him, and I ran towards the door, and he was right there, tried to grab me, get me back in there.
And what happened?
Then I made it outside.
So he wasn't able to bring you back in?
Bring me back in.
He tried?
He tried.
And as you left that apartment, as you got away from him, I'm going to ask you again, what impressions were made on your mind by the conduct of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the actions of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the manner, expressions, and conversations of Jeffrey Dahmer that you observed? Can you give us some words?
It's like I told the policeman that this freak, this crazy guy, was trying to hurt me. Yeah.
Did you run out of the building?
Yes, I did.
Did you summon help?
Yes.
Milwaukee Police Department?
That's correct.
Did they come back there with you to the apartment?
Right.
Did you eventually go back into the apartment with the Milwaukee police officers?
Yes.
And then he was arrested?
Right.
You gave a statement to the Milwaukee police a few hours later?
Yeah, I guess you could say a few hours, yeah.
Ken, how long do we anticipate the cross-examination of this witness?
I'd say. On the night of July 22nd, 1991, Milwaukee police finally discovered the horrendous secrets that Jeffrey Dahmer had been desperately hiding for many years. Acting on a tip from a young gay man who escaped from Dahmer's apartment, police searched number 213 and found a chamber of unimaginable horrors. Human heads and a heart wrapped and bagged in the freezer. Hands and feet at the bottom of his soup kettle. Skulls tucked away in a file cabinet. And this blue barrel stuffed with dismembered torsos soaking in acid. Dahmer would spend the next 24 hours confessing, telling in vivid detail of a murder spree that began in 1978 when he was 18 and ended with 17 young men dead.
I had this reoccurring fantasy of meeting a hitchhiker on the road and of taking him hostage and doing what I wanted with him. And I never in my wildest nightmares thought that it would become a reality.
Why would Dahmer have, as he put it, created his own Holocaust? How did he become so filled with evil? It would be comforting to point to an abusive childhood, an early life filled with hatred or horror, but his was filled with love.
Jeff was the most beautiful, darling, sweetest baby, the nicest young boy.
There just were no real signs when he was growing up.
Imagine your child grows up to be a murderer. Would you still love him? Would the guilt and sense of responsibility be overwhelming? Jeffrey Dahmer's parents have struggled mightily to understand what might have gone wrong with their child. His father's search for an explanation led him to look inward, even to write a book simply titled A Father's Story. But his search may be in vain, because even the experts and profilers who've studied serial killers are baffled by why they do it.
There doesn't seem to be any indication in any of the serial murderers that something external makes them want to kill. It's as if something is thrown, a switch is thrown, and they begin on the pattern of what their pattern will be.
Maybe all we can do is what Lionel Dahmer did. Look back and try to see what went wrong. As a young child at the beach with his parents, Jeffrey Dahmer discovered a dead crab. He examined it with a child's curiosity, but later the curiosity grew into something unthinkable.
All I know is that I wanted to see what the insides of these animals looked like. There may have been some violence involved, some underlying subconscious feelings of violence. It was a compulsion became a compulsion.
Jeffrey Dahmer got bigger, and so did his compulsion to look at the insides of living things. He began to kill them, satisfying powerful urges that he didn't understand.
In 9th grade, in biology class, we had the usual dissection of fetal pigs, and I took the remains of that home and kept the skeleton of it, and I just started branching out. Dogs, cats. I suppose it could have turned into a normal hobby like taxidermy, but it didn't. It veered off into this.
More and more, Dahmer killed animals in the woods behind his house. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't stop. Then, at 14 or 15, it got worse.
I don't know, it became a compulsion, and it switched from animals to humans. I still don't understand it. I don't know why.
If your fantasy life as a teenager includes killing, who do you tell?
From about 15 years on up, a great deal of my thoughts were basically unshareable with anyone. So I just closed myself off and just put on a mask of normalcy.
As Jeffrey Dahmer entered adolescence, his secrets multiplied. He began to feel attracted to other young men. It was not an issue he could talk to his father about, but Jeffrey knew he was gay.
Started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex. And it just got worse and worse. I didn't know how to tell anyone about it, so I didn't.
And just as Jeffrey was becoming aware of his internal violent sexual urges, his external life began to unravel. His parents' marriage, which had been rocky throughout his childhood, finally ended. He found himself alone more and more. And then one night, while his mother was away on a trip and his father newly moved into a motel down the street, a fantasy Jeffrey had been having for years came true, and the killing began.
I was 18 years old, driving home. I saw this hitchhiker about a mile from my house, and he caught my eye. I drove past him, thought to myself, should I stop and pick him up, or should I just keep on going? I wish I just kept on going, but I didn't. I turned around, picked him up, and that's when the nightmare became a reality. It just seemed so bizarre to me that this obsession that I had been thinking about and wanting, just all the parts are there, and they make it possible to make it happen. Just at the time when it could happen, when there's nobody at the house for 2 weeks.
After the first time he murdered, Dahmer says that he tried to get control of himself, and for 6 years he did not kill again. In 1984, he found himself living in Milwaukee, frequenting gay bars, when the violent sexual urges overcame him again.
I met this guy at one of the bars, downtown Milwaukee bars. We went back to the hotel, just planning on getting drunk. I had put some sleeping pills in his drink to render him unconscious, and was just going to spend the night with him. When I woke up in the morning, my forearms were bruised, and his chest was bruised, and blood was coming out of his mouth. He was hanging over the side of the bed.
This type of behavior and the urge that develops, it's triggered. It doesn't go in cycles. It may be a place that he's in that reminds him of something. It may be something that he hears. It may be a certain season. It may just be a color. It's intimately connected with memory and previous experiences and something that goes on at an unconscious level.
Whatever it was, it came over Dahmer almost like a dream.
I have no memory of beating him to death, but I must have. And that's when it all started again. had no intention of hurting him at all.
How could Dahmer not remember? It's hard for a normal person to imagine, but Dr. Helen Morrison believes that the brain functioning of serial murderers is unique.
Part of his mind is split off. Again, we have this piece of this puzzle that's somewhere that doesn't connect with the thinking part or the logical part. It's not far removed from those of us who drive every day and we drive the same route and we don't know how we got from point A to point B. We know we did it, but it doesn't enter our consciousness.
Unlike other serial killers who seem to actually derive satisfaction from the killing, Jeffrey Dahmer says he did not. His motivation, his objective was sexual. He wanted to create a sexual slave that he could totally control. And to that end, he performed the most horrific of experiments on his victims, literally drilling holes in their head.
I tried to create living zombies with muriatic acid in the drill, but it never worked. No, the killing wasn't the objective. I just wanted to have the person under my complete control to do with as I wanted.
Dr. Helen Morrison, who profiles these men, says part of the reason is because serial killers like Dahmer literally feel things differently than a normal person.
To the serial murderer, it's very similar to the young child who may pull the legs off of a daddy long legs or a fly to see what happens. There is no humanity there. It's just, oh, this is a very interesting thing. They do things to individuals that they've never experienced themselves. They want to see pain, or they want to see fear, or they want to see agony.
And with Dahmer, that experimenting included what had to be the most shocking part of this case. He sometimes ate his victims. An idea abhorrent to anyone with even vaguely human sensibilities. And yet, here again, Dr. Morrison says that, in fact, Dahmer's behavior makes a peculiar kind of psychological sense.
Jeffrey Dahmer was not the only individual who was a cannibal or bit his victims or used teeth as a weapon. If you remember about infancy, if we go purely psychologically, the only way an infant interacts with his world around him is through touch, feel, and teeth. And this is a way that babies explore their world with their mouths. That's what they use. That's how they relate to the world. And what is evident in all of the serial murderers is this trait of very oral, or mouthing, or biting, or eating, ingesting, which is highly infantile, but it seems to be a way in which they can be with their victim.
It made me feel like they were a permanent part of me. Besides the just mere curiosity of what it would be like, it made them feel that they were a part of me, and it gave me a sexual satisfaction to do that.
By the late 80s, Dahmer had spiraled completely into a free fall of killing. A serial killer was on the loose in Milwaukee, but why wasn't anyone noticing? Serial killer profiler Robert Ressler says it was easy for Dahmer to hide.
He was fairly good looking and very shy. And I think I've often said that in any college group, you could put him right in the middle of a college group and probably you would look at him as a decent young man.
And that was Dahmer's most powerful weapon in luring his victims into his world. 17 in total. They had several traits in common. They were all men, all young, mostly minorities, and almost all were gay. Starting in 1984, one by one, these men disappeared. But nobody in Milwaukee had any idea that a serial killer was on the loose. Annie Schwartz is a crime reporter for the Waukesha Freeman newspaper in Milwaukee.
It was very much business as usual before Jeffrey Dahmer was caught. Because of the nature of the victims, the kinds of people that he chose, they were people that for the most part weren't missed by their families. They were often people who were tossed aside by their families because they were gay or they had had problems with the police. He chose his victims very carefully. He chose people that wouldn't be missed.
If families were not missing the victims, Jeffrey Dahmer's family was missing clues that something was terribly wrong. There were close calls, like this one with his father, Lionel.
I had a box in my bedroom closet, and it contained the mummified head and genitals of a young man I met in one of the bars down in Milwaukee. And it was a locked metal box. My dad one week came to visit and happened to see it, and he was wondering what was in it. He didn't know. Nobody knew. I told him it was pornography, some magazines. And he wasn't satisfied with that answer. We got into a bit of an argument because I wouldn't open it up. He took the locked box down to the basement and was about to smash it open. But I came back in the house, we reconciled.
The reconciliation with his father would mean the lies would go on and that Jeffrey Dahmer would continue to hunt down victims in the gay bars of Milwaukee and kill them. But in a city with a relatively low crime rate, why were the police not connecting the murders? Dahmer's seeming normality helped him hide his reign of terror.
People like Dahmer can get away with this easier because law enforcement does not recognize him for what he is. They're looking for somebody who's dragging their knuckles on the pavement and baying at the moon with hair in their face. They're not looking for Mr. Nice Guy, the quiet young man living in the neighborhood.
But there may have been something more to why the murders went unnoticed.
Okay, hi, I'm on 25th and State, and this is young man. He is butt naked. He has been beaten up. He is very bruised up. He can't stand. He's study fall out. He is butt naked. He has no clothes on. He was really hurt. And I ain't got no quarter on him. I just seen him, and he needs some help.
Where is he at?
On 25th and State, the corner of 25th and State.
He's just on the corner of the street?
Yeah, he in the middle of the street. He fell out. We trying to help him. Some people trying to help him.
Okay, and he's unconscious right now?
He getting him up, but he is bruised up. Somebody must have jumped on him and stripped him or whatever.
The call is about this young man, Conorak Synthesin phone. The voice is that of a neighbor, Glenda Cleveland, who spotted the young man trying to escape Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Dahmer had already tried to perform his crude sex zombie experiment on the 14-year-old, drilling a hole in his head and pouring in acid. Drugged, bleeding, dazed, the young man had somehow managed to get away from Dahmer and yell for help. The police did come. Jeffrey Dahmer told the police that Synthesin phone was his 19-year-old lover with whom he'd been quarreling. The police went into Dahmer's apartment, saw nothing amiss, and returned the boy. The police then radioed back to the station, joking about what they had seen.
The intoxicated Asian naked male was returned to his sober boyfriend. My partner's going to get deloused at the station.
A month later, when Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested, he admitted to killing Synthesin phone shortly after police left. The death would cost the two police officers their jobs and would force the entire city to look inward at attitudes and treatment of minorities and gays. There would be candlelight vigils and city-decreed days of healing, but Jeffrey Dahmer would leave a black mark on Milwaukee.
The place where Dahmer's apartment building stood was raised and put a playground in. Raised all kinds of money from the community, and no one in the community wanted to use this playground because they said it was the devil's playground. I think that the city of Milwaukee, at the end of the Jeffrey Dahmer case, was left with the unfortunate realization that it can happen here. It being whatever horrific thing that you see on the news that you think happens in other places and to other people. There was the sad realization for people that live in the city of Milwaukee that it could and did happen here.
But of course, the deepest scars would be reserved for the victims' families and the family of the murderer.
Never, Jeffrey! Jeffrey! I hate you! Jeffrey's out of control! Don't with me, Jeffrey! I'll kill you! Look at me!
You took my mother's oldest grandchild from her, and for that I can never forgive you. I hope you can deal with what you've done.
The families of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims had their day in court and an opportunity to address him. Jeffrey Dahmer sat motionless throughout. His father, Lionel, sat behind him. Jeffrey's crimes had been a terrible shock for him, so much so that for the first 24 hours after he learned of them, He didn't believe Jeffrey's confession.
How can you see your son who's been riding a tricycle and running around with his dog Frisky and playing tennis with me, taking a knife and cutting a person open, and then doing sexual things with it? It's pretty hard.
Those who profile serial killers can understand why Lionel would have such trouble reconciling his baby boy with the adult killer who would perpetrate such sickening crimes.
We do know that when puberty comes, the ages of 13, 14, 15, that the hormones seem to interact with the brain chemistry, and we have no idea what that's doing or where it's coming from.
I think probably there was a mixture of feelings of anger and hate and disappointment and also feeling extremely sorry for what he did. You know, felt very sorry for victims and their families, and also for Jeff, the terrible waste.
Both Lionel Dahmer and Joyce Flint, Jeffrey's mother, struggled to find a way to support their son in the face of his crimes, a brutal task for any parent to endure.
There's something or things so deeply locked up in his mind that even he doesn't know what's going on, and therefore I have to hug him.
It's almost like I don't have a right to mourn or grieve, because there are all these families who will never, ever speak to their children again.
By all accounts, Jeffrey Dahmer seemed to be relieved that he had been caught. He cooperated thoroughly with authorities and a battery of doctors and profilers who wanted to learn more about his behavior.
What was uncontrollable about Jeffrey Dahmer was the urge. It was the urge he couldn't control. It was the craving he had to satisfy. And that's why when he killed because he couldn't satisfy the urge any other way and had to do it immediately.
And this is something Dahmer seemed to know better than anyone. At his sentencing, he read a statement of apology for his crimes.
Your Honor, it is over now. This has never been a case of trying to get free. I didn't ever want freedom. Frankly, I wanted death for myself. This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. I know how much harm I have caused. I tried to do the best I could after the arrest to make amends, but no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused. I know I will be in prison for the rest of my life.
The rest of Jeffrey Dahmer's life would last less than 2 years. In November of 1994, a fellow inmate of Dahmer's beat him to death. The killing occurred in a 20-minute period when the men were unguarded. Although Dahmer expressed repeated remorse for his actions, in the last interview he granted before his death, he made a stunning admission that he still had fantasies of killing.
It never completely goes away. I'll probably have to live with it for the rest of my life. I wish it would go away. I wish there was some way to completely get rid of the compulsive thoughts, the feelings. It's not nearly so bad now that there's no avenues to actually act on it. But no, it never seems to go completely away.
Solemnly swear all the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated, sir. And then would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Patrick Kennedy, K-E-N-N-E-D-Y.
Your Honor, prior to or during the break, I was informed that Ms. White is going to be the person from the District Attorney's Office handling these two witnesses. I'd like to make a statement to the court for the jury to understand and for everyone to understand that I am calling Detective Kennedy now so that he may testify as to part of the confession given by Mr. Dahmer. He's going to testify to the early part of the confession that was given by Mr. Dahmer, that subsequent to a certain period of time, Detective Murphy came in on the case, and that he and Detective Kennedy then took most of the other statements from Mr. Dahmer. We are only going to go through the part where Mr. Kennedy was alone. Then we are going to dismiss him with the understanding that the state will be calling him back later for other reasons. Then I'm going to call Detective Murphy to the stand to continue the giving of the confession that was taken by Mr. Dahmer. I am therefore at this time going to ask some preliminary questions, and I'm going to ask that the entire confession be marked as an exhibit, and if it is going to be received, I'm going to ask the court to hold that it not be shown until such time as we have a chance to clean up some of the underlining and things of that nature. So I'd ask that the entire confession that's going to be talked about by Detective Kennedy, Detective Murphy be marked as
It's all correct.
Just so the record's clear, I'm showing you Defendant's Exhibit number 1 for identification, and I ask you, if you look at that briefly, do you know that to be the confession that you and Detective Murphy took from Jeffrey Dahmer, and especially the first 4 pages as being part of that confession, with you personally took from Mr. Dahmer while Detective Murphy was not present?
That's correct, sir.
And as far as you're concerned, you've had opportunity to look at this confession in total?
Yes, sir, I have.
And the documents that I showed you, the confession that was taken?
Yes, sir, it is.
I move, Your Honor, that it be received into evidence as Defendant's Exhibit 1, the confession given by Mr. Dahmer to the Milwaukee Police Department over a period of days, which will be identified as we go along, with the understanding that I will have an opportunity to remove superfluous things from this document that do not have any relevancy to the issue before this court in this case.
Your Honor, the state has no objection to the admission with the reservation of those extraneous matters in the confession being removed.
Okay.
We're doing that.
I'll receive the evidence, but I'm going to have a stipulation as to anything that's to be removed.
We're working on that and doing that.
Detective Kennedy, you're a member of the Milwaukee Police Department?
Yes, sir, I am.
For what period of time have you been so employed?
12 years.
And when did you join the Milwaukee Police Department?
In March of 1980.
And what age were you when you joined the police department?
26 years old.
Prior to joining the police department, what, if anything, did you do?
I worked for the state running halfway houses for delinquent youths.
When did you become a detective of the Milwaukee Police Department?
Not quite 3 years ago.
And since that time, you've been functioning as a detective with the department?
That's correct, sir.
There come a time on July the 23rd, 1991, while in the course of your official duties as a detective of the Milwaukee Police Department, you came across the person of Jeffrey Dahmer, he being the gentleman seated next to my associate, Wendy Patrick.
Yes, sir, that's true.
Let the record reflect that Detective Kennedy has identified Mr. Dahmer.
No objection.
Detective Kennedy, what were the circumstances under which you became aware of Mr. Dahmer, and would you tell the court and the jury how that came about, please?
I was working on a homicide squad on the late shift. My partner, Michael Dubas, and myself were sent to Mr. Dahmer's apartment to investigate a head which was found in the refrigerator.
And that apartment was located at 924 North 25th Street in the city and county of Milwaukee?
That's correct, sir.
What apartment was Mr. Dahmer's apartment? What was the number?
Number 213.
Did you have occasion at that time to make some observations concerning that apartment?
Yes, sir, I did.
But since I've already informed everyone here that we're going to only talk about the statement, we'll limit that aspect of your testimony to that, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you start talking to Mr. Dahmer about anything?
While I was in the apartment, sir?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Did you have occasion to transport him from the apartment?
Yes, sir, I did.
And who did you transport him with?
In a Milwaukee police van, which is used to convey prisoners, Squad 93, police officer Alan Cheslow, and myself.
So you started taking him down where? Downtown?
That's correct, sir.
And he was in custody.
Yes, sir, he was.
You advised him of his constitutional rights.
Yes, sir, I did.
You told him about all of his rights.
Yes, sir.
Did you ask him if he wanted to make a statement?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did he make such a statement to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. You also advised him that he that he had a right not to have an attorney if he wished.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Tell us what you said to Mr. Dahmer and what he said to you during the time that you were present with him, where Detective Murphy was not. Okay.
Yes, sir. Would you like
me to read from the exhibit if you wish?
Okay, sir. At this time, I rode along with the suspect Jeffrey L. Dahmer in Squad 93 down to the CIB.
Explain what that is, CIB.
It's called the initials for the Criminal Investigation Bureau. That's the Detective Bureau.
Please.
Once at the CIB, I advised Jeffrey L. Dahmer of his constitutional rights, and he stated that he fully understood them and that he wished to freely make a statement regarding the incident.
Can you tell us what time of the morning, night, or day it was?
This was approximately 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, that would have been on the morning of the 23rd or the morning of the 24th?
That would have been on the morning of the 23rd.
Okay. Continue on, please.
At this time, Mr. Dahmer states that he is 31 years of age, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He states he moved to Richfield, Ohio when he was about 6 years old, and he was raised there and attended and graduated from Revere High School. He states he spent 3 years in the Army after graduation and moved back to Milwaukee when he was approximately 23 years old or so. The subject states he has a father who lives in Pennsylvania and a mother who lives in California. He states he has one brother, 26, living in Cincinnati, and his grandmother on his father's side lives in Milwaukee. The subject states he was raised in the Protestant faith as he was growing up, but he now considers himself to be an atheist.
Let me just stop you there. Is this a question and answer type of thing?
Yes, sir, it is.
And then later you put down whatever notes you thought were important, and then you transcribed them into the form that you're talking about here.
That is correct, sir.
Continue on.
He admitted that he had been arrested in the past and states he is currently on probation for taking Polaroid pictures of a minor. Subject states that when he was 18 years of age and living in Richfield, Ohio, he picked up a hitchhiker whom he described as a white male about 19 years of age. He states he took him home and had homosexual sex with him, and states they were drinking beer and became intoxicated. He states they got into a physical fight because the 19-year-old individual tried to leave, and that during the fight, he states he struck the hitchhiker with the barbell. He states that the blow of the barbell caused the death of the hitchhiker. And at this time, he took the body out into a wooded area by his house and left it there to decompose for about 2 weeks.
Let me stop there. Did you know that there had been such a murder or a homicide that had taken place when he was 18 years of age at the time that you were talking to him?
No, sir, I did not.
So he volunteered at commission of a murder?
That's correct, sir.
Is that the first murder that he told you about?
Yes, sir, it is.
And you didn't have him on any other murder charges at that time, did you?
I realized that there was a head in the refrigerator.
I understand that, but
no,
you didn't
sir,
have a murder. You didn't say you're under arrest for the murder of?
No, sir.
Okay, go ahead, continue after that.
He states he returned with a sledgehammer at this time and used it to break the bones, and then he scattered them about the woods. The subject states he moved to Milwaukee after a 3-year tour in the Army and a 1-year stay in Miami, Florida, where according to the subject, nothing of this nature happened. Subject states he moved in with his grandmother at 2357 South 57th Street when he returned to Milwaukee. And he states that when he was about 25 years of age and living in Milwaukee, he picked up a white male approximately 25 years of age at the 219 Tavern. He states they got a room at the Ambassador Hotel, and they got very drunk and passed out. Subject states when he woke up, the guy was dead and had blood coming from his mouth.
Let me stop you. Did you know of that homicide at the time that he volunteered it?
No, sir, I did not.
Continue on, please.
He states he went to the mall and bought a large suitcase and stuck the dead body into it. He states he called a cab and placed the suitcase into it and went back to 2357 South 57th Street. He states that he took the dead body down his basement near a floor drain and used a knife to cut the flesh off the body and then dismember the body, placed the various parts into plastic bags, and then threw them into the trash. The subject feels this occurred in 1984 during the summer. He indicates that there had been many times that he has had sex with men where no violence was involved, and states that about 2 months after this incident, he met a Hispanic male about 18 years of age, also at the 219 Club at about 1 a.m. They went back to his grandmother's place and had sex and put sleeping pills in his drink. He states when the guy fell asleep, he strangled him with his hands and took the body down the basement by the drain and used a knife to dismember him and a sledgehammer to break up the bones, and then placed them in plastic bags and threw them into the trash.
Detective Kennedy, did you know of that homicide at the time you were talking to Mr. Dahmer?
No, sir, I did not.
Continue on, please.
He goes on to state about a month later, he met a black and white mixed male, about 20 years of age, at the La Cage, a tavern on National Avenue, and took him back to his grandmother's house where he had sex and used sleeping pills with him. He states when he was asleep, he strangled him and then dismembered his body and disposed of him in the same manner as before.
Did you know of that murder at the time you were talking to Mr. Dahmer?
No, sir, I did not.
Go ahead.
The subject states a year went by and he met a Hispanic male, about 19 years of age, at the 219 Club, and returned with him to his grandmother's house where he again had sex, used sleeping pills, and strangled him, and again dismembered and disposed of the body in the same way.
Once again, you didn't know about that homicide?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
Subject states he moved to 808 North 24th Street and lived there for a year, and was arrested one time for taking pictures of a minor. After 1 year of work release from the House of Correction, he moved back to his grandmother's house and lived there for approximately 6 months. At this time, he moved to 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213. Subject states in the winter of '89, he met a black male about 24 years of age in front of the bookstore on 27th Street and took him to his apartment where he took pictures of him in various sexual poses and had sex with him and put sleeping pills in a coffee and rum drink which he gave to the black male. When the black male fell asleep, he stabbed him with a large hunting knife, which he described as having a 6-inch blade and a black handle. He stabbed him in the neck. After the guy was dead, he put the body in the bathtub and dismembered him. He states he used the knife to dismember him. The subject states he used a plastic trash container or garbage bag and put the bones in it with hydrochloric acid and let them sit for about 3 days until they turned to a mushy substance, and then he flushed them down the toilet. The subject states that he filleted from the body, the subject states the flesh he filleted from the body he put into trash bags and threw them out.
You didn't know of that homicide, did you, at the time you were talking?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
The subject states he also, starting with the third victim, boiled the heads in a cleaning solution and kept the skulls. He kept the skulls in the closet. All identification and jewelry of the victims he states he cut up and threw out into the garbage. The subject states about 2 months later, he met a black male, about 20 years of age, around Wisconsin and Water, and walked home with him and again had sex, used sleeping pills, which was placed in a coffee mixture, and strangled him. He then dismembered the body and disposed of him in the same manner as before.
You did not know of that murder?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
Subject states he began getting quicker at cutting up the bodies. The subject states about 1 month later, he met a tall black male about 26 years of age at the C'est La Vie, and they took a taxi home to his apartment, and he repeated the same scenario with him, but did not boil and keep his head. The subject states this was due to time constraints. Subject states about 6 months later, he met a black male about 20 years of age while in Chicago, and rode back to Milwaukee by Greyhound bus. He states before this, he met a Chinese male about 15 years of age at the Grand Avenue Mall. This was around May or early June. He states they took a bus back to his apartment. It was during the day or the afternoon. He states the Chinese male posed for Polaroid photos, and then he gave him sleeping pills in the coffee and rum drink. After he passed out, he strangled him and dismembered and disposed of his body parts in the same way as before.
Once again, these last 2 or 3 murders he's talking about, you had no idea about.
That's correct, sir.
Go ahead.
The subject states that the body parts gave off an awful smell in the trash, but no one ever did anything about it, so he just kept following his usual procedure of disposal. Regarding the black male from Chicago, he states that he repeated his usual actions with him. Regarding the head in the refrigerator.
Now, let me stop you there. At the time that you were there, and understanding we're talking primarily about the confession, there was a head found in the refrigerator of the apartment.
That's correct, sir.
It was not identifiable as to whose skull that had been, correct?
Not at that time, sir.
Okay, continue talking.
Regarding the head in the refrigerator, he states he met him, a black male about 25 years of age, at 27th and Wisconsin, and took him home and repeated the same actions with him. He states about 1 month ago, he bought a 57-gallon industrial drum and began placing body parts in it. Subject states on about 7/19 of 91, he met a white male about 25 years of age near Marquette University and took him home, had sex with him, gave him sleeping pills in the coffee rum drink, strangled him and filleted him in the bathtub, dismembered him, and placed the body parts in the industrial drum.
Another homicide you did not know about.
That's correct, sir.
Go ahead.
Regarding the Chinese male, the subject states that after giving him sleeping pills, he fell asleep, and he, the subject, went to the bar on 27th Street. He states that as he left the bar, he saw the Chinese guy running down the street naked, and the police saw him and stopped him. And he was not speaking any English, so he talked with police and said that he was a friend of his and that he was staying with him. At this time, he took the Chinese guy back to his apartment, gave him some more coffee and rum solution with the sleeping pills in it, and after he fell asleep again, he strangled him, dismembered him, and disposed of him in the usual way. He then boiled his head. He states it takes about an hour to boil a head. Regarding his last victim, he states that his ID can be found in the bedroom of his apartment.
Was that a fact?
That is correct, sir.
Go ahead.
Regarding 7/23 of 91.
That's the evening or the early morning hours when he was arrested.
Yes, sir. The subject states he met a black male about 25 years of age at the mall on Wisconsin Avenue. He states he offered him $20 in cash to let him take some nude pictures of him. Once at his apartment, they drank rum, and he, the subject, got intoxicated.
When you say the subject, you mean who?
Mr. Dahmer.
Okay.
Subject states that he tried to put handcuffs on the victim, and the victim ran out and got the police. Subject states he is not sure what happened next because he was drunk. Regarding the handcuffs, he would ask his victims if they would allow him to take a bondage picture with the handcuffs on, and that is how he would get them handcuffed. The subject states there is an ID from the male he met on 27th in Wisconsin in his wallet.
Is that a fact? Was that a fact?
Yes, sir, it was.
Go ahead.
The subject states that all his victims knew that homosexual activity was the idea and possibly pictures. At this time, after the subject gave me this statement verbally, I advised him that I would like to write it down verbatim on paper. However, before I did so, I would like to get another detective to sit in and be witness to this statement. He stated he understood and that he wished to cooperate, and at this time I went and got Detective Dennis Murphy, who entered the room. And together we reiterated his constitutional rights, which he stated he understood and that he wished to waive them in order to help us with this investigation. It was during this time that a 4-page confession was written out by myself, Detective Kennedy, and read back to the subject, who also read it, and then stated that it was accurate and true. And then he signed it, Jeffrey Dahmer. He also initialed each page of the 4-page confession. It should be noted that during this entire time that I spoke with the subject, Jeffrey Dahmer, he was given numerous cigarettes, 4 to 5 cups of coffee, 2 glasses of water, 2 cans of Coca-Cola. He was also allowed to use the bathroom upon request. This entire confession started at approximately 1:30 a.m. and finished at approximately 7:15 a.m. After the confession was completely written out, read over, and signed by the subject, he was asked if there was anything that he would like to do or if he was hungry. He stated that he was not hungry and probably will not be hungry for a long time. However, he would just like to sit and talk about the offenses a little bit more. The conversation which followed at this time has been recorded by Detective Dennis Murphy, and he will file a detailed supplementary regarding what was said during this interview.
Okay. Now, you understand now that I understand that you're going to be called back later for additional questioning by either side.
Yes, sir.
But during the time, just so it's clear, he was very cooperative.
Yes, sir, he was.
And he was not intoxicated.
No, sir, he was not.
And he seemed to understand what you were asking him, and you understood his answers.
Yes, sir, he did.
So this was done in a colloquy back and forth, and What you're telling us here is you put down these words after you talked to him, looking at your notes, and then eventually he signed the papers.
That's correct, sir.
Were these the papers that he signed?
These papers here?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, something else that you wrote out.
That is correct, sir.
Is it exactly the same thing, only in handwritten form?
Yes, sir, it is.
So you wrote everything here out in handwritten form. Mr. Dahmer read it, said it was correct, signed it, and then you took all of that same information and typed it up, and that's what you just read.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And we'll see you again, Detective Kennedy.
Any questions at this time?
Not at this time. Detective Kennedy may be recalled at a later time.
Okay, give me a step down, sir.
Detective Murphy. Thanks.
I desensitized myself to it. I don't know, I went to great lengths.
He is pure evil, but you'd never know it by looking at him. But when you hear him, that's another story. His killing field was Milwaukee, and he got away with murder for more than a decade. But how could any of this happen? For the first time ever, Nancy Glass is here inside the world of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Bill, when I sat down opposite Jeffrey Dahmer for this interview, I wondered what he would tell me, how hard it would be to get him to discuss his horrific crimes. What I found was that he was very forthcoming. He volunteered details that may be difficult to hear. I began by asking what he wanted from the men he picked up.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them, to, I don't know how to put it, possess them permanently.
And that's why you killed them.
Right, right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons.
Jeffrey Dahmer is recalling his monstrous past. Almost 2 years ago in this little apartment in Milwaukee, police discovered the grisly remnants of one of the most horrible crime sprees in American history. Jeffrey Dahmer, an unassuming chocolate factory worker, would eventually confess that he had seduced, murdered, and dismembered 17 young men. He even ate some of his victims' body parts. He instantly became the center of worldwide media attention, a serial killer unmasked. There were protests and press conferences in Milwaukee as people tried to understand how this could have happened in their midst. How did Jeffrey Dahmer get away with murder after murder for 13 years? How did a boy born into a hard-working, middle-class family turn into the worst kind of monster imaginable? In this exclusive interview, we put those questions to Jeffrey Dahmer himself. We met with him at the maximum security prison where he is serving his sentence of 999 years. For the first time, he talks about his crimes and gives us a chilling look inside the mind of a serial killer.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
The reason why Jeffrey Dahmer was able to get away with his crimes was because of just what you are seeing here. Jeffrey Dahmer is intelligent and articulate. That is what makes him so frightening. But if you listen carefully to his words throughout this interview, you realize it is a thin disguise. You do sound, though, like the kind of person who could have said to himself, "This is wrong. I must stop."
I always knew that it was wrong, but after the first killing was not planned. I was coming back from the shopping mall back in '78. I had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker and taking him back to the house and having complete control and dominance over him.
The hitchhiker's name was Stephen Hicks. He was just 18. Jeffrey Dahmer took him to his parents' house. There he strangled him with a barbell. He dismembered the body and hid it in a drain pipe. It was Jeffrey Dahmer who gave those details to the police in his confession.
No one had a clue as to what was happening for over a decade.
During that time, Jeffrey Dahmer joined the Army and was sent to Germany. He was eventually discharged for a drinking problem and returned to Ohio. 9 years after Stephen Hicks' murder, the killing began again.
What happened to you in the 9 years in between that you were able to stop, that you were able to control yourself?
There just wasn't an opportunity to fully express what I wanted to do. There was just not the physical opportunity to do it then. And I started, when I moved to Milwaukee in '81, I started reading pornography, going to the bookstores. Eventually that led to frequenting the gay bars. And then one time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. I had no intention of hurting him. When I woke up in the morning, he had a broken rib here, was heavily bruised. Apparently I had beaten him to death with my fists.
And you have no memory of it?
I have no memory of it. But that's what started the whole spree all over again.
Dahmer says he snuck the corpse of his victim, Stephen Toomey, out of his hotel room in a suitcase. Then he took it to his grandmother's house, where he cut up the body and put it in plastic garbage bags.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
But Jeffrey Dahmer was out of control. The urge to kill had overpowered him. As police later learned, he wasn't satisfied with his victim's death. He wanted more.
Why did you photograph them?
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep something. If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons. And I even went so far as planning on setting up an altar with the 10 different skulls and skeletons.
And what was the purpose of the altar going to be?
As a sort of memorial. A point where I could, I don't know. It's so bizarre and strange, it's hard to describe. A place where I could collect my thoughts and feed my obsession.
When the bodies were still in your apartment, there was no time when you would see them and say, this is grotesque, what have I done?
There were times, but the compulsive obsession with doing what I was doing overpowered any feelings of revulsion.
This man with a quiet, almost shy demeanor became a master manipulator who was able to lure strangers he met at gay bars to his apartment. He was even able to con the police into returning a 14-year-old boy to him after neighbors called 911 upset that the child was in the street, naked and bleeding. Dahmer convinced the police that he and the boy were simply having a lover's quarrel.
It was an intoxicated boyfriend of another boyfriend.
Well, how old was this child?
He wasn't a child, he was an adult.
After the police left, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered that boy, Conorak Synthesophone. This man says he had a near-fatal encounter with Jeffrey Dahmer.
He wanted to take some picture of my back. He hit me with a rubber hammer on my neck.
He was lucky to escape because by then the killing had become almost routine.
Before you went out to pick up a man, was there any kind of ritual you went through?
I'd go to the nightclubs, drink, watch the striptease shows, and if I didn't meet anyone at the bars, I'd go to the bath clubs and meet someone there, offer them money, and we'd go back to the apartment, have a few drinks. I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
Watching the movie Exorcist III was also part of his ritual. It put him in the mood for murder.
I felt so hopelessly evil and perverted that I actually derived a sort of pleasure from watching that tape.
Did you like feeling evil?
No, I didn't. But I had tried to overcome the thoughts, and it worked for a while, but eventually I gave in.
While Jeffrey Dahmer may say things today that make it seem like he understands what went on in his mind, he does not. All he can do is tell you what happened, but he cannot stop whatever it is that drove him to kill in the first place.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
Jeffrey Dahmer says as time went on, his mind became more and more warped, and yet he was clever enough to continue to elude police and lure young men to his apartment. We should warn you, the details are very graphic.
I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
Jeffrey Dahmer fulfilled his fantasies by murdering and dismembering 17 young men. In time, his desires became more extreme, his deeds more grotesque. Listen to him talk about the most unnatural things in the most matter-of-fact of ways. That's when you realize that none of it has touched.
And the arm muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me. Water, and it never did completely work.
Could someone like you be stopped? Could you be helped?
No, I was dead set on going with this compulsion. It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
He became so warped by his evil impulses that he even took a victim's head with him to work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory.
I kept the mummified head and skull of one of the victims in a carrying case in my locker at work.
Were you almost flaunting it?
Yes, but that's how strong the compulsion was. That's how bizarre the desire was. I wanted to keep something of the person with me.
Jeffrey Dahmer exhibited some disturbing behavior early on. He began drinking heavily as a teenager, dropped out of college, was arrested for indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, and fondling a 13-year-old boy. Tragically, one of his murder victims would be that boy's brother.
Do you know what started it? Was there any kind of incident that you can remember?
To this day, I don't know what started it. And the person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
His macabre 13-year crime spree finally ended when this man, Tracy Edwards, brought the police to the infamous apartment. Like the others, he had gone there with the promise of money.
He was listening to my heart, because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point. I hit him and I ran.
What was the turning point for you that made you suddenly realize that you had done something terribly wrong, something you should be sorry for?
It was the night of the arrest. I have no memory of what happened during the 6 hours before the last victim ran out of the apartment. I heard a knock on the door, and the police were there with the last victim. They asked me where the key was to the handcuffs. My mind was in a haze. I sort of pointed to the bedroom, and that's where they found the pictures. And they yelled, "Cuff him." And I was handcuffed, and it was just the realization that there was no point in trying to hide my actions anymore. The best route was to help the police identify all the victims and just make a complete confession.
When it was revealed that most of the victims were black or homosexual, people in Milwaukee were incensed. Many felt that was why he went after them and why the police didn't seem to care when their families reported them missing.
10 of your 17 victims were black. Were they racially motivated?
It was not racially motivated. It was not sexual preference. It was just to find an obsession with the best-looking young man I could find.
While you just heard him say that his sexual preference had nothing to do with the killings, he has not come to terms with his homosexuality.
Never understood it. There was no use trying to fight it because I couldn't rid myself of it. It was too powerful and persistent.
Do you dislike it?
Yes, it's caused a lot of problems for me. A lot of conflicts and unanswered questions.
The conflicts remain with him, and so do his compulsions. But in prison, he finally cannot act on his savage desires.
If you were